Hello and welcome. You're watching the Saturday edition of This Is Exclusive. There may be a ceasefire agreement, but that doesn't stop us from showing the real face of the Pakistani army. Over the last few days, there has been a humiliating defeat that the Pakistanis have had. Operation Sindoor has destroyed Pakistan. Ladies and gentlemen, India and Pakistan may have agreed to a ceasefire, but the terror state, modus operandi, is one that cannot be overlooked. Tonight, we bring you the concrete proof, evidence that will put to light how Pakistan drags civilians into warfare, how the common man is used as human shields. A video exclusively accessed shows the Pakistani FATAH missiles firing position clearly located within a civilian population area, exposing a concerning tactic routinely employed by the Pakistani army. By deliberately placing artillery and gun positions in densely inhabited zones along the line of control, Pakistan aims to exploit the presence of civilians as human shields, making any counter-bombardment from the opposing side likely to result in civilian casualties. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight on This Is Exclusive, we are going to now take you through those very images and exact modus operandi of how Pakistan has been operating. Let me take you through the details that are coming in. Now, this is about the missiles that have been fired by the Pakistanis. These missiles were targeting Indian cities. Let me take you through the details of it. On your screens right now, this is the very location where the Fatah missile was actually launched. And thereafter, what we're going to show you is where it was being launched from. This was basically being launched from a civilian area. In fact, let me take you through some of the details that we have with us right now. Now, why firing from a civilian area basically gives some sort of a strategic advantage to them. That is because that perhaps would prevent a professional army like that of Indian Army from carrying out a counter-bombardment. Now, the firing position is clearly in the civilian area. It may be highlighted that having a firing position within civilian area is purposely done by Pakistan so that any counter-bombardment would basically cause some sort of a collateral damage. And Pakistan Army has this technique of placing the even gun positions on the LC in populated areas so that the collateral damage can take place. And the Pakistani army essentially does not care. It certainly does not care for civilian lives at all. Now, it's a carefully thought process of the Pakistani army, and because they don't care about civilian lives, and that is the reason why they've been non-stop targeting civilian areas here in India. They've used human shields. I'm going to give you multiple examples to show you the hypocrisy of this army. And I'm saying this, it is an immoral army, an army which does not care for their own soldiers, an army which does not have any rules of engagement, an army which does not really care for civilians. I doubt they even care for their own nation. The reason being is this. Once again, I'm going to take you to the details, what we are calling hammered and completely exposed. Now, we have to just make this change right now. Let's take this off. This what you're seeing right now. These are the interceptions that have taken place. Can we please go back to the first story right now? The story that we are bringing to you is that of how Pakistanis have essentially been using that same modus operandi. Now, Pakistan has basically deployed this artillery in a civilian area. Now, take a look at it. You have this firing that takes place not very far away from there are civilians who are basically present there. Civilians who are in those very areas. Now, what really happens? When a missile is actually fired, it basically is tracked by our gun radar locating machines. Now, when it does that, it also helps us to identify the very place from where the missiles have been launched. It also gives us the option that if at all we want to counter that, or perhaps carry out a counter bombardment, then it can be done. But if this happens, that it is in a location like this, which is basically inside a civilian area, then it prevents a professional army like that of the Indian Army from carrying out any sort of an attack. And that is how they've been using the humans as a shield. Civilians are now being used as a shield by the Pakistan Army. It's a tactically chosen area. Counter-bombardment would cause civilians harm. Can I also have Iona speaking to me with regards to what we are bringing out next right now? Because this, as I understand, is a clear copy of the Hamas, the operation of the Hamas right now. Because if you see, this entire operational style has been copied from Hamas, and perhaps Hamas has been some sort of an advisory board of the Pakistani army, because they've had their meetings with Jaish, they've had their meetings with Lashkar-e-Toiba. So of course the Pakistani army must have also taken their advice from Hamas by carrying out what we believe is their same style of functioning, because they've chosen this. And these images that we have accessed clearly goes on to indicate the same. Now I'm going to show you the clear comparison between Hamas and the Pakistan army. There's not much of a difference. Hamas attack model and Pakistan replicating the same. Now, if you take a look at, these are all underground areas where the IDF, Israel's defense forces, were basically trying to find out where exactly, how they were basically operating. You have the Shifa hospital, which was also used for carrying out attacks against Israel. Now, this is the Shifa hospital in Gaza. This hospital was basically used as some sort of a launch pad. In fact, what you see right now, these are ammunitions on your screens, ammunitions, and the very fact that you have remains of these ammunitions that are being used, you have the IDF basically going inside and carrying out a search operation. Now, pretty much what we are seeing here, Pakistan basically is using the same very model. Their model isn't very different than what perhaps the Hamas has been doing. And there is a clear example of how both have actually joined hands. And there is also another information that we have. Before the Pahalgam attack actually took place, there were several secret meetings that were taking place. These meetings were of the top leadership of the Hamas. In fact, whatever remaining of the Hamas leadership, in fact, their meetings at the Jaish headquarters. In fact, you've had a convoy of cars going and giving a reception to a grand welcome, in fact, was given to several of the Hamas leadership, members of the Hamas, and they thereafter had multiple meetings. These meetings that took place between Jaish, Lashkar-e-Toiba and the Pakistani army. The Pakistan army Hamas operandi that we are revealing tonight. How Pakistan uses Hamas model to use civilians as a bait. Their entire operandi has been completely exposed, and we've just shown you those images right now. Comparison between Pakistan Hamas model. And I'm not sure if we have Abhishek who's going to join us on this broadcast, getting us the latest details, but I'm going to stay with these pictures till the time I know what we are going next. Hamas's attack model and Pakistan's replicated that same very model, what you see right now on your screens. It's very similar. And what we are essentially looking at right now is the fact that when the Fatah missile was actually launched, this was basically launched from a civilian area. You can clearly see the civilians who are all present there when the firing took place. Now, contrast that with what you're seeing in Gaza. In Gaza, remember, the IDF has basically exposed how Hamas was living right within the civilian population, surrounded by the civilian population, and the fact that these underground guns, underground terminals were basically being utilized to their best of advantage, because they knew that perhaps, if at all Israel basically responds, then they would have a cover. The cover would be this, that they can blame Israel for targeting the civilian population. And that's exactly what the Pakistani army has also done. Now, let me take you through more details that we've been able to put together. The details are of the meetings that have taken place, these meetings between the Hamas commanders and Jaish-e-Mohammed commanders, as well as the Lashkar-e-Toiba. And the fact that in these meetings that have essentially taken place, it is very clear. The clarity essentially emerging that there was an understanding between all of them, the Pakistani army too, and we have seen this in Pahalgam too. In Pahalgam attack that was carried out. In the Pahalgam attack too, the same Hamas model was used. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the fact that Pakistan army is essentially known as an immoral army is only because of this. For them, civilians do not matter. And it's a desperate attempt that they've basically made. Here on your screens, as I'm saying that they were firing these missiles from a civilian area. What was the target? The target was these very civilians. Now, take a look at it. Here, this Fatah missile, that was the debris of these Fatah missile was found from an agricultural land. And you have a civilian population around it. Look at here. You have locals who have been carrying this debris. So whom are you really targeting? You're targeting the civilians. For the Pakistani army, it does not matter. And you contrast this with us. Indian army, when they carried out a precision attack, the attack was so precise that it had only targeted the terror facilities. The entire ecosystem, the terror ecosystem was basically being targeted. We were not targeting any mosques. We were not targeting any religious institutions. We were not targeting any children. We were not targeting any women. We were only targeting terrorists. We were only targeting terror facilities. And the Pakistanis have done something else. The Pakistanis were basically firing what? They were firing at us. They were firing using armed drones. In fact, take a look at this. Permanent remnants of projectile that was found in Sirsa. And this is the very missile that was basically fired from a civilian area. You have this missile, the Fatah 2 missile is what we are being told was basically fired, and this is what remains right now. And Pakistani missiles were all basically aimed towards only one thing. That's the civilian population. Of course, the military installations being one such. But interestingly, they've been exposed. They've been exposed how? By the Indian Army as well as the Indian Air Force. Over the last few days, during the briefing that took place of Operation Sindoor, you've essentially seen the modus operandi of Pakistan Army. They did not even call for any movement, no time, as far as their civilian airspace is concerned. That civilian airspace wasn't even stopped, wasn't closed. So what was Pakistan's ulterior motive? Pakistan's ulterior motive was this: carrying out drone attacks at multiple locations, 36 locations of the first day, 26 locations of the second day. And in both the cases, when this was actually happening, their airspace wasn't closed, which means that civilian flights were actually still flying. So if at all India wanted to basically retaliate, India would have to thought twice, because if at all any of our missiles basically targeted the civilian airline, it would have created chaos. And take a look at it. 3 incidents where civilian airspace being kept open. All of it, the timing of it, at that very time when the drone attacks were taking place, you have had the flights also here. This is from Dammam to Lahore. And in fact, this was on 7th of May, 2025. This was at the same very time. A little after 8 o'clock is when the firing actually began. Can we please go back? Here, 7th of May, Wednesday, the flight Dammam to Lahore. Then let's take you to the second very day. You have Islamabad to Saudi Arabia, a flight that was still going on. This flight that you see was airborne when you've had the drone attacks taking place. And then, of course, the third day, which was basically last night, even after Indian Army basically exposed them. And in fact, we should keep the soundbite ready right now of Colonel Qureshi, who had exposed the Pakistani Army of using human shields. And take a look at this, Dubai to Sialkot, even after warning them, telling them that this is your real face, you've had the Pakistanis keeping the airspace open again last night when there have been civilian airspace was still kept open. In fact, I'm going to also take you through what was fired, but take a look at it. In Hoshiarpur, PL-15 missile was actually fired. And in Sirsa, there have been drone debris that have been found. In Bhuj, drone debris have also been found. And I'm going to tell you why this is quite important, crucial. In Jalandhar, drone debris have also been found. In Bhatinda, missile debris have been found. In Barmer, again, missile debris that have been found here. Projectile debris coming in from Jaisalmer. And from Pokhran, projectile debris also coming in. Missile and drone debris that has been found from Amritsar. And from Akhnur too, it's the multiple missiles that have been found and they've been intercepted. Drone debris that have been found from Firozpur, and in Firozpur there were certain injuries that were sustained by the civilian population. RS Pura is also once again the drone debris that have been found. Now, just to give you a sense of what's really happening here. The Pakistani army on the first day carried out unarmed drone attack. The second day, they sneaked in armed drones, but not at all locations, in some certain locations. Third day, you have had a situation where the intensity has only been increased, and the armed drones that were basically found, these armed drones were basically targeting the civilian areas. In fact, MEA sources now indicating that India and Pakistan have reached an understanding after the Pakistan side reached out to India. There are no preconditions and post-conditions. Indus Water Treaty remains in abeyance and all other measures remain suspended. India's position on terrorism remains the same. Now, this is again, you have Pakistan that has been completely hammered in the last few days. And they have now gone to the United States of America seeking for some sort of an intervention. And this entire ceasefire agreement has thereafter been drafted. Now, as far as the decisions that have been taken diplomatically are following the attack that took place in Pahalgam. That stands even today. So this is a military understanding that has taken place where you will not be opening fire. Secondly, what we are given to understand is that they are very clear on their position that has been taken. As far as the Indus Water Treaty is concerned, it is essentially going to be, it is still going to remain. Indus Water Treaty remains in abeyance and all other measures. Now, the other measures that were taken, one that is reduction of the staff in the embassy. That has been reduced to 30. Cancellation of visas, that still remains. Pakistani nationals have been asked to leave India. That also still remains. Now, these are some of the details that are coming in right now. Can I also have Abhishek on the phone line, if possible, getting us the latest details? In fact, MEA sources now indicating that this remains. The Indus Water Treaty in abeyance still remains. There is no change on that. There is no change as far as the visas are concerned. Cancellation of visas still remain. The third is with regards to the staff members in the embassy. That too remains. So what is it that the ceasefire agreement really achieves? The ceasefire agreement is essentially on the condition that if at all any terrorist activity takes place from the soil of Pakistan, it is going to be seen as an act of war. Now, that's the position that India has taken, and it is a strong messaging that has been done by India. Well, that's all that we could pack in this edition of This Is Exclusive. Coming up on the other side, Forces First.